Hey everybody, I'm Samurai Sam. Welcome to another episode of me looking at every single game in my collection. Today we're looking at Famicom, which is, as you may know, Japanese NES games. Now Famicom cartridges look completely different than NES games, but they are in fact for the same system and completely compatible with one another as long as you have some kind of a converter so that the cartridge will fit in the other region's system. That's what I'm trying to say. And Famicom was obviously a huge success, just like the NES. And there's so many Famicom games that were never released for the NES. And also, another reason to collect Famicom is that a lot of Famicom versions of NES games that are really expensive are a lot cheaper. And sometimes there's not even really a language barrier. So I enjoy collecting cool stuff on Famicom, and I'm about to show you what I have collected up to this point. Let's start out with Daiku no Gensan. Translated roughly as Gen the Carpenter, I believe. And this was released actually in Europe, but not America. It was released in Europe under the name Hammer and Harry. This is a side-scrolling action game. You play as this dude who has a hammer and you whack things. This game's got a lot of personality. It's got like voice samples and stuff, which was rare at the time. And it's a cool game. We've got Final Fantasy II, which we originally didn't get until, I believe, Final Fantasy Origins on PS1 in 2003, I think. In America, that is. This was one of those experimental sequels where they really tried to do something different with the second game after a successful first game. Like, they really did a strange way of leveling up your characters in this one. And to be frank, it didn't really work out all that well. Nobody has really done it this way since then. Not really that great of a game, but an interesting game. Now we have Final Fantasy III. This, like many third games like Mario 3 or Castlevania 3, Mario 2 isn't technically a real non-experimental sequel, but whatever. Zelda, Link to the Past, for example, it's one of those third games that kind of goes back to the roots of the first game. Final Fantasy 3 goes back to the older EXP system, and also goes back to the job assigning system. Only instead of picking 4 classes at the start of the game, you can freely change your character's classes in the middle of the game, and it was really innovative at the time. A lot of RPGs since have done this differently and maybe better, but built upon the foundation that this game built. And this is one of the best 8-bit RPGs for sure. We didn't get this one released in America until 2006 on the DS. I played that version and I really liked it. We have Fire Emblem 1, the Dark Dragon and the Sword of Light. That's Marth on the front not wearing pants. So this was the first ever what we call strategy RPG. I mean, there had been strategy games, there had been RPGs before this. This was kind of the first game to meld them together in a certain way that became basically its own genre. And very revolutionary game at the time. It's a little bit hard to go back to this game now because of the various improvements that have been made to the genre. And also this game itself has been remade twice. Yeah, twice has been remade. So this really is the third best version of the game now, from an objective standpoint. So mostly the reason to go back to this just would be to see what it was like rather than actually play through it. There are some really sloggy parts, but it is still a very impressive game considering the system and the era. Now we have Fire Emblem Gaiden, which was, surprise, surprise, another experimental sequel. They really changed a lot of how the game works fundamentally in this one, and actually some of the ideas they had with Gaiden were pretty good, and they brought back some of them eventually. Gaiden actually just got remade on the 3DS, what was it, last year or 2 years ago? I don't remember, but pretty recently. Personally, I'm not a big fan of Gaiden. It's just not, the gameplay's not as interesting to me, and the experimentalness is kind of neat, but it's just not that fun to play in my opinion. But some people like it. Now we have Ganbare Goemon, and I don't know the whole title. It's like Karakari Docho or something like that. This was the first console iteration of what wound up being a popular series for Konami, mostly in Japan, but a few titles in the US here. This particular game has you going around levels. You need to find a certain number of passes, basically like a hall pass, like a card. You have to find them hidden throughout each level, and you have a time limit too. And it's pretty fun. It's pretty unique for the time, I guess. Kind of like a beat 'em up kind of structure, but a little different. It's not really like an arcade beat 'em up. There's a little bit of a language barrier, but not too much. And I think there's an English patch for this. But it's a fun game. It's kind of hard to describe if you don't actually play it yourself. But if you're into 8-bit games, I recommend trying this one. It's good. Then there's also Ganbare Goemon 2, which kind of builds on the foundation of the first one. This one adds boss fights, which the first one didn't have. Which to me, I don't think the first one really needed boss fights. It also adds 2-player mode, which honestly, in my opinion, doesn't really work that well for this game. Just for me, in my opinion. But still a good game. And I actually think I like the first one a little bit more, but this is still good. It's got a lot of personality and humor as well. Now we have Ganbare Goemon Gaiden, which is an RPG with Goemon characters, and being a Goemon game, one typical feature of Goemon games is that they're very humorous. So, yeah, it's a very silly RPG, kind of not to be taken seriously, but gameplay not anything really special, but I mean, that's what you expect from this time. Then there was also Ganbare Goemon 2, which I believe took the silliness even higher. Interesting game. I haven't actually played this one, so I can't really comment. We have Joy Mech Fight, which is a 2D fighter by Nintendo, one of the more obscure Nintendo games. This is after Street Fighter 2. This is a later Famicom game, and this is actually surprisingly very good fighting game that holds up pretty well. This is actually available on the Japanese Switch online game service, so I think you can get access to that even with an American Switch, so maybe that's worth looking into. Palamedes 2, I showed off Palamedes 1 for NES last video, and this is, they changed the gameplay a little bit. I haven't played this one too much, but there's a couple different modes, more like throwing dice to try and match up like numbers or something like that, and it's a cool game. We have Namco's Star Wars. This is different than the Star Wars that came out in the US for NES. This is a completely different game, and it doesn't really follow the plot of the movie. It has its own plot, and it's kind of weird. Basically, you're Luke Skywalker going to rescue a bunch of characters. There's all kinds of like doppelganger enemies that are masquerading as Darth Vader, and it's weird. It's hard, and it's not great, but I find it very intriguing. We've got Twin Bee 3. Stinger in the last video was Twin Bee 2. This is Twin Bee 3, and more of the same like shoot 'em up action with bells, with kind of a unique power up system, and 2-player mode, which was not standard at the time, I believe. YY World. This is a crossover game before crossover games were cool, where Konami had characters from a whole bunch of their different franchises. I haven't played this one a whole lot, and I really should, so I can't really say too much about it, but I think there's a lot of variety in gameplay here. And then the same goes for YY World 2, which is kind of more of the same, although this is not like a rehash of the first one at all. I think it's actually quite different than the first one, but kind of the same crossover sort of thing going on. Now we have Akumaju Densetsu. Now we're on to loose carts now, doing both in one video. Akumaju Densetsu is the Japanese version of Castlevania 3, and this is really the better version because the difficulty is more fair, and the music is a lot better. They use a sound chip for the Famicom that we didn't have for the NES or something, and it just sounds really good in my opinion. That's the version to check out. If the Castlevania collection on the Switch and PS4 and Xbox One has the Japanese version on it, so check that out. Also, speaking of which, this is Kid Dracula, Boku Dracula-kun. This is a cool spin-off, kind of silly, cartoony spin-off of Castlevania. It actually plays more like Mega Man than Castlevania, and this got an English release officially for the first time in that Castlevania collection, so go check that out. We have Banana, and I forget exactly what this game is. I think it's a puzzle game. It's been a while since I booted it up, but it was cheap, and it seemed cool, and had good reviews, so that's why I grabbed it. I will play it at some point. We have Binary Land. This is an interesting game because you control 2 different characters on 2 sides of the screen, and like they move at the same time when you press up or left or down or right or whatever, and you have to like move them in a way that they both reach the end of the maze because their mazes are different, and like one will get stuck on a wall when the other one's moving, so you have to keep that into account, and it's a cool game. I haven't really played that much like it. Bird Week. I forget exactly how to describe this game. I don't know if it's like an action game. I don't think it qualifies as a shoot 'em up, but basically you fly around, and yeah, I don't know this. I haven't played this game too much, so I can't say too much, but I think it's a good game. You have Castle Quest, which is another one of those kind of strategy chess spin-off kind of games where you have a grid and like turn-based and stuff. But again, I need to find like someone good to play this with, and I kind of haven't yet, but I want to. We have Kokorone. This is a cool little action game where you can basically customize your main character with a whole bunch of different parts and kind of make like a automaton or whatever you call those things. And they have different attributes too, so it's not just aesthetic. And I think it's kind of Mega Man-ish, and it's considered to be a good game. We have Devil World. This is this game actually got a European release, and it didn't get released in America for like religious concerns because people might get upset with a game called Devil, and this is kind of very Pac-Man-ish, and what the devil does is he'll like move the stage and make you in danger of like going off the stage and dying. But it's a neat little arcade kind of game. Dragon Fighter. This is the first of a few games we're going to see here that do have NES releases that are just really expensive. This is an action game where you can be a human, or sometimes you can turn into a dragon for a temporary amount of time, and it's a neat little game. We have okay, this is the first of many Kunio-kun games, and I'm not going to remember all their titles because they're really long. And yeah, I'm having trouble remembering exactly which one this is. I think this is like the one that's kind of like a race, but I don't remember. But there's a lot of Kunio-kun games that they're usually like sports or some kind of athletic competition, and they're usually not traditional, but also not like completely silly, cartoony either. They're kind of somewhere in between. Here's another Kunio-kun game, and which one is this? Downtown Special. Maybe this is the running one. Let me see, can I identify this one? I bought all these Kunio-kun games all together, so I don't like... It's all kind of a blur to me because I got them all around the same time, so it's hard for me to remember which one is which sometimes. This is Getsu Fumaden. This is by Konami, the people who did Castlevania. This is kind of another side-scrolling action game, but not like just a Castlevania clone. It's different, and like there's a world map that you can go around. I tried playing this game once, and it seemed kind of brutal and hard to get into, but I definitely want to try it again. I've heard it's really good, and it's got cool music and themes and everything. And it's Konami. Konami makes so much good stuff. Gun Knack, this is another shoot 'em up that was released in America, but it was really expensive. This game is really cool, but there's somewhat of a language barrier having the Famicom version of this because there are shops where you have to buy stuff, but there are ways around that with guides and videos and stuff. Cool game. Probably one of the better shooters on the system. Here we have Habareke. This game took a lot of inspiration from Metroid, where kind of like the whole game is one big level, and you got these 4 different characters you can switch between that all have their own abilities that help you get around. And this game got released in Europe as Euphoria, but not America. Later, America got it on the Wii Virtual Console and Wii U Virtual Console, and I actually think this is a really fun game, and I think it actually holds up better today than the original Metroid does. And this actually spawned a whole series called Habareke that a few of the games got released in Europe, but I don't think America ever got a single one of them aside from that Virtual Console release that I just mentioned. Here's another Kunio-kun game. This one is a little more obvious. It's a hockey game. I believe this game was planned for a US release, but it got canceled. And I haven't played it a whole lot, so I can't really say just how much I like it. This is Jackie Chan, another expensive American game in Famicom form. You play as, of course, Jackie Chan, and it's an action platformer, and it's really well made. And Jackie's sprite is kind of amusing, the way he's kind of chibi, actually. He doesn't really look like he does here in this picture, but yeah, definitely a cool game even if you don't even care about Jackie Chan. We have Kyato Ninden TND, which is based on a TV show, and the TV show actually was localized for America in the 90s as Samurai Pizza Cats. Seems like a funny show that I probably would have liked as a kid, but I never ever saw it. But this game is cool regardless of whether or not you saw the show. It's another one of those action platformers, and I believe you can switch between different characters, and I think they have different abilities as well. Yeah, one of those games. They're usually good, those types of games. We have Mad City. This got released in America as The Adventures of Bayou Billy, but the American version made the game way more hard and unfair and stupid. And this version is actually all right. So this is the version to get if you're interested in Bayou Billy. It's got a decent amount of gameplay variety. Like there's beat 'em up stages, there's driving stages, there's like light gun stages. Interesting little game. Wing of Medulla by Sunsoft. I want to say this is, I think this is yet again another like side-scrolling action platformy kind of thing. I don't think this one has like an open Metroid-y kind of level design. I don't think, but I could be wrong. I'll have to check it out more in depth. Mickey Mouse 3. This got an American release, only stripped of its Mickey Mouse licensing. It got released as Kid Clown with a completely different character, but the same gameplay and everything. Again, expensive game in the U.S., and so, besides, I like Mickey Mouse more than Kid Clown. Of course I do. So, this is a fun little platformer, and I believe the gameplay involves, like, as you see Mickey there, it's like you can blow up balloons or something, and that has something to do with gameplay or whatever. We have Mighty Final Fight, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but yes, expensive NES game in Famicom form. It's actually pretty cheap on the Famicom, And Final Fight in arcades in the early 90s was a very popular beat 'em up, kind of realistic, gritty kind of game. But then they made this one after that, and it was like all real chibi-looking, cartoony characters instead. The same characters, just, in cartoony form. And this is supposedly a very good beat 'em up. Again, I have to play it. I got a lot of these Famicom games, by the way. Like, I got a lot of them together. I got a lot of these fairly recently. Like, if you go back even as recently as like 3 years, I didn't have most of these. These is actually fairly recent, so I haven't had a lot of time in my life to like sit down and play a lot of them. But I have played a few. This game is Moai-kun. This is a puzzle platformer sort of by Konami. Basically, the shoot 'em up Gradius had a bunch of Moai head enemies that were, serious. Like, they looked like the actual Moai heads from Easter Island. This takes the Moai head and makes it a little cartoony character, as you see there on the front. And you have to solve puzzles, like hit rocks around and stuff to solve puzzles. And it's a really cool game. Definitely recommend it if you like solving puzzles. We got another Kunio-kun game, and again, I feel bad not knowing which one this is. Yeah, I know there's the baseball one is for Super Famicom. Yeah, I forget if there's it's been too long since I fired these up. I want to say it was like a year ago last time I did or something. And that's too bad because I wish I could tell you more about which one is which and what they're all like. But, yeah, part of the reason why I'm doing this is because I need to remember, I enjoy going through my games like this because I get to see, what games should I be paying more attention to. It gives me an excuse to do that. New Ghostbusters 2. Now, this game actually did get released in Europe. I think both these versions are about the same price, the European and Famicom versions. But us Americans have to import either way. This is one of the best Ghostbusters games that exists, probably. Not that there's too many, not that there's a ton of competition. Ghostbusters on Genesis is pretty good. But this is like a top-down, overhead action game. And I believe, you always have, a partner by your side, but I forget whether or not an actual second player can join in. Again, I have to check that out. It's a pretty short game, but a good game. This is also, by the way, different than the Ghostbusters 2 that got released in the US. This one is called New Ghostbusters 2. Not that that's going to confuse anybody or anything, right? Then we have some more Famicom games over here. We have Nuts and Milk. I believe this was the first ever third-party Famicom release. This is a very early Famicom game. This cartridge design is early Famicom. And I can picture the game in my head right now, but it's hard for me to describe it to you. I think it involves escaping in every stage or something like that. You have to you're this little cartoony looking character or something. This little blob, I think. And you have to climb and escape enemies and get to the end of each screen or something like that. Yeah, I should play that more. I should have a Famicom day or something where I just play a bunch of these because these games don't take a lot of time unlike modern games to really play. Solomon's Key 2. This was released in America as Fire and Ice, which again, say with me, it's an expensive NES game. And this one is actually very different than the first Solomon's Key. The first one was an action platformer. This is more straight puzzler. It involves manipulating ice and fire, melting ice or creating ice, I think. And I've played some of it. I haven't beaten it, but this is a really cool puzzle game. If you enjoy solving puzzles, I definitely recommend this game. One advantage to the Famicom version, actually, is that it has a save battery rather than a password system. If you consider that an advantage. That way you don't have to worry about writing down passwords. But, definitely a game I had to have, and I chose to go Famicom. We have Super Mario Bros. 3. Now, why would I have this, you ask? Well, the main reason is because, interestingly, the Famicom version of Super Mario Bros. 3 is actually harder because if you get hit when you have a power-up, like Fire Flower or something, you will go all the way back down to Small Mario. Whereas in the US version, you will just lose the power-up and you'll still be big. So this is kind of like the hard version of Super Mario Bros. 3. It's also the original version, so I thought it was notable enough to make it worth collecting. We have the first Twin Bee game right here. Konami games actually had end labels. Most other Famicom cards didn't. Twin Bee is a very... the first Twin Bee is really short, I believe. It's it barely takes any time to beat it at all, I think, technically. But you're supposed to play it over and over where it'll send you back to level 1 and it'll be harder. It's one of those games. So you're kind of meant to keep playing it over and over and try to get a high score. That's kind of the deal. I forget if Twin Bee 1 is multiplayer or not. This is a game I did play through. This is Wanpaku Gourmet something Guru no World something. This was released in America as Panic Restaurant, and it's one of the most expensive NES cartridges there is. The NES version also changed the main character. He's not this little boy. He's a dude with a cool looking mustache. But this is a fun little platformer where you can use kitchen
utensils as weapons and stuff, and of course the enemies are like all food and utensils and stuff. Fun little colorful game. Main problem with this game is that it's just too short. You can beat it really quick, but it's if you like platformers, you like games with a lot of personality, it can be up your alley. This is Wily and Light's Rock Board. That's Paradise. This is a Mega Man spin-off board game kind of deal. There was actually a few of those in Japan. Like, that didn't really catch on in the U.S. for some reason, video game board games. But I definitely want to get some friends together to play this at some point and see how it is. I don't really want to play it against the computer. I don't want that to be my first experience. We've got... I'm probably going to butcher the name of this game. This is Yi Ar Kung Fu. Wait. Okay, so I have to actually read the Japanese to figure it out. Yi Ar Kung Fu. Okay. So this is a very early fighting game. Probably not too bad considering its age, considering this is pre-Street Fighter. But like more of like a historical significance than like a real great game to play probably. But I got it for like nothing, so I figured why not add it to the collection. And then last but not least, we have Yume Penguin Monogatari, which I believe that translates to the beginning of the penguin dream or something like that. Basically, you play as this penguin. I think you're trying to rescue your girlfriend. I think that's her on the front there under the name. But basically, enemies will like try and get you fat, so like they'll throw food at you or something, and you'll get fatter. And like you have to get power-ups in the game to like slim down. It's really funny. It's like a game all about dieting. If you get too fat, obviously that's bad. And this is a fun little Konami game, quirky platformer. Definitely recommended if you get into Famicom collecting. And that is it. That is all my NES games, all my Famicom games. So stay tuned. Genesis is coming up next. Sega Genesis will be next. I'm not sure whether at this point, whether I'll start with loose cartridges or boxed games or do like some of both or whatever. But coming up next will be Sega Genesis. Until next time, this is Samurai Sam. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.